Hello, this is Elizabeth Ortel, and for the next hour, I'll be reading from the Wednesday, July 22nd issue of the Democrat and Chronicle on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Victor cleaning up after severe weather damage. There's a picture here of a huge tree, and it's being cut up by a chainsaw worker with a hard hat and ear plugs on after a severe storm in Victor on July 18th. Neighbors help others after mess of storm by Mike Murphy. Just like it was for many Victor residents and work crews over the weekend, July 20th was cleanup day in the village after a devastating storm tore through the Finger Lakes region the afternoon of July 18th, leaving downed tree branches and limbs and damaged homes in its wake. Ingrid Zimmerman, who lives on East Main Street in the village, was away for a time July 18th, but on her return home, she saw extensive tree damage to her property. Her home and garage also sustained damage from falling branches and limbs. It's better than it could have been, and what could have happened, Zimmerman said. The fast-moving storm July 18th hit Victor hard and then forced an early end to the downtown Canandaigua Art and Music Festival, damaging vendor tents in the process. Emergency crews also responded to numerous weather-related 911 calls, and trees were down at various locations in the city, according to Canandaigua City Manager John Goodman. But in comparison to other municipalities like Victor, we fared very well, Goodman said, so we're thankful for that. Victor Mayor Sean McAdoo said he had not heard of any injuries as a result of the storm. But on July 20th, the village was only about 10 to 15% cleaned up from the storm. And that's after Department of Public Works crews worked after the storm July 18th and put in long shifts July 19th. For many residents, power wasn't restored until the early evening of July 19th. Public Works crews will be devoted solely to debris removal this week, but trails in the village were closed, and the hardest hit neighborhoods north of East Main Street were seeing debris piling up at the curb. McAdoo estimated that cleanup won't be complete until July 24th at the earliest. Village officials are to meet to discuss next steps on possibility getting outside resources to help. It's a mess. There is no official word yet on the level of storm that did so much damage in Victor. The National Weather Service reported an EF1 tornado touched down July 18th in the southern tier, but McAdoo had not heard anything official about the storm in Victor. Further exacerbating concerns, more severe weather is on the way. Severe thunderstorms were possible in parts of western and north central New York the afternoon and evening of July 21st, with the primary threat coming from damaging winds. The Weather Service did not rule out the possibility of an isolated tornado in parts of the region. The fickle nature of severe storms was evident in Victor, as portions of sidewalks in the village were completely clear of debris and some yards didn't seem to have a blade of grass out of place. Yet, large tree branches landed on some homes and decks and cluttered backyards just a short walk to the east of the areas that did not seem to be touched by damaging winds at all. Meg Wagcob and family count themselves as lucky ones. A huge tree branch that ordinarily provided shade for their back deck fell down in the storm, but it narrowly missed the roof of her East Main Street home and fell into the neighbor's backyard. Friends and family soon arrived to help with the cleanup, as did teen members of the Young Life Church group, who drove up from Buffalo to lug branches and limbs to the curb July 20th. We have a lot of work to do, she said. As can happen after a natural disaster, neighbors walked up and down Main Street to check on each other after the severe weather cleared and made sure everyone was okay. McAdoo traveled around the village over the weekend to check on how things were going. I saw people coming out of their homes and helping each other get things to the curb, which was nice to see. With more severe weather in the forecast, it was only natural to think back to July 18th and how quickly the storm blew up, wreaked havoc, and then left the area. The Wacobs tried to take their dog for a walk shortly before the storm hit, but their pet would have none of it. She was the first one to tell us something was wrong, Wacob said, adding she soon heard a constant roll of thunder. It sounded like an airplane or a freight train, and it got louder and louder. It was very loud for a long time. It was just a consistent noise, and then it picked up really fast. That's when the family went to the basement and later discovered that many of her neighbors did the same. When they came back up, it was destroyed out here. After learning of the weather forecast, the prospect of another major storm is concerning, Zimmerman said. I don't know what's going on with the weather because every time we get a thunderstorm, it's scary, Zimmerman said. It's scary. Another article from the front page, Keeping Rochester Fringe on the Edge. Erica Fee leads Arts Festival in its 15th year by Janae Shields. To Erica Fee, Rochester is the right home for one of the country's most prominent multidisciplinary arts festivals. I think we're like the perfect size city for it. First of all, because often in bigger cities it doesn't have as much of an impact because it's getting lost in everything else that's going on, Fee said about the ESL Rochester Fringe Festival. The 12-day festival, running September 15th through the 26th, will feature more than 715 performances ranging from comedy and music to dance, circus arts, theater, and family-friendly entertainment. Fee, who is the CEO and founding festival producer of the festival, has a long history with the performing arts and working with or guiding fringe festivals. Fee began her career as a professional actor and producer at the Edinburgh Fringe in Scotland before founding her own company in London. In 2008, then University of Rochester President Joel Seligman led a group of stakeholders working to bring Fringe to Rochester. In the midst of running her own production company, Fee was asked to put a proposal together for the Rochester Fringe. Now, Fee leads the International Festival in its 15th year as the producer and executive director. The following is a question and answer with Fee. Answers have been lightly edited for clarity and length. What has been the most challenging about building Rochester Fringe? We're like the Madonna of festivals, so we're constantly reinventing ourselves. And that's a challenge, right? Because it's new every year. And there are so many moving pieces. I mean, this year we have 45 venues. So that's a lot of venues to coordinate and get on board. Then also our curated portion. This year we have a whole new component, Circus in the City. And on the 18th and 19th of September, we are going to turn downtown into a mini Montreal. We're going to have all of these different professional circus companies that are coming in from everywhere. So the logistics of that, of the Chinese pole, ladder balancing, a juggle jam on Gibbs Street, and aerial in 2 different places. One area, that is a lot. How do you stay inspired? This is what makes Fringe brilliant, is that we're not programming everything. That's what keeps it fresh. We have all of these venues programming, and we have the open application process that starts in February. We don't need to have all the ideas, because all these ideas are being submitted to us, and our venues are choosing what they want to book. Some great shows have come out of that. In terms of what we curate, we're inspired by what's happening at the rest of the festival. Sometimes we'll have a show that'll be at a venue one year, and then the next year it might be like Charming Disaster. We've had them at our venues, and then we had them in the Spiegel tent one year. But also, I travel and I go to Edinburgh Fringe and I see what's going on. I stay in close contact with a lot of presenters nationwide, and we talk to each other all the time. Do you have a sense of where you draw your audience from? We know that at least 10% of our ticket buying audience is coming from outside the Rochester area. But the free shows, that's very hard to determine. We do know that people are coming from outside the area. We have people fly in every year from New York City. There are some super fringers I know that come from Michigan every year. Someone last year who was husband and wife, the husband flew in from Arizona and the wife flew in from Ireland. There is a whole super fringer aspect of people who are traveling to this festival, and people locally who are just taking 12 days off. What are your hopes for the future of Rochester Fringe? I think that all of the performing arts, everybody was hit so hard by COVID. The performing arts were closed the longest. And the other thing that was closed the longest was festivals. So it was a bad combination. I feel the performing arts groups are still emerging from COVID. There were just a lot of people who left, and so it's taken a while to build back. I think that continuing to build back is obviously very important, not just for us, but all of our venues and our performing arts groups. We're seeing ourselves become more and more of a regional destination. So the more of a regional destination we can become, the better. Another article from the front page of the Democrat Chronicle that I'll share with you. Southern Iranians blame U.S., not their rulers, for hardships. Dubai. Opposition to Iran's clerical rulers has long simmered in the country's impoverished south. But after bearing the brunt of U.S. strikes in July, many residents are directing their anger at President Donald Trump and an air campaign, they say, has upended their lives. Southern Iran, which borders the Strait of Hormuz, has been a major target of U.S. attacks on ports, energy facilities, and transport infrastructure. Washington says the strikes are aimed at curbing Iran's ability to threaten shipping through the strategic waterway. Tehran says they have gone far beyond legitimate military targets. Most of the more than 24 Southern residents interviewed by phone or messaging apps agreed that the strikes had gone beyond targets with a clear military purpose. Trump has ruined our lives more than the Islamic rulers did, said Amin, who runs a small boarding house for tourists in the South, blaming the U.S. strikes for worsening economic hardship. Despite long-running hostility toward Tehran in many southern provinces, including among some of Iran's marginalized ethnic minorities, none of those spoke to said the conflict had generated support for renewed anti-government protest. I feel like I'm suffocating, Amin said. Such frustration with the strike's impact helps explain why, even in provinces known for anti-government protest, the war has not triggered further unrest, something Trump had hoped for at the start of the conflict. Like the other Iranians that were talked to, Amin asked that his family name not be published for fear of reprisals. Reza, 62, a veteran of the 1988-89 Iran-Iraq War, said his son had been detained during mass protests in January, and he had little time for Iran's theocratic system. But he was still willing to fight against the United States, he said. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Democrat Chronicle on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. If my country needs me, I'll take up arms again. not for this regime, but for the soil beneath my feet. It's the least I owe it, said the retired teacher from his home in Abadan. The Southerners that were talked to included people who had taken part in previous bouts of protest and described themselves as opponents of the ruling system, but none said they supported renewed unrest for now. At the same time, few voiced support for Iran's rulers, a potential sign of future problems for Tehran. The clerical leadership fears that prolonged economic hardship could further anger its core base among middle and low-income Iranians, particularly if a peace deal remains out of reach. Iran's minorities, who also include Kurds in the west, Azeris in the northwest, and Turkmen in the northeast, have been opposed to the ruling clerics for decades. Grievances range from the right to use native languages in schools and courts to policies that have damaged their local environments and worsened health and other care. Despite having most of Iran's oil and gas, Southerners have also complained of low investment, little opportunity, and state services so poor that power networks fail in the scorching summer heat, leaving them to swelter without relief. The U.S. attacks have deepened our problems. No electricity for hours means no water for hours in this heat, said Hadi, a grocery shop owner in Khuzestan province. And now an article from page 2 of the Democrat Chronicle. More of U.S. Route 15 becoming Interstate 99. 12 years after a stretch of U.S. Route 15 from Corning to the New York state line was designated as an interstate highway, another portion of that road through northern Pennsylvania is set for that conversion as well. The Pennsylvania Department of Transportation, Penn DOT, announced a 62-mile section of Route 15 from Williamsport through Tioga County to the state line, with officially will be designated Interstate 99 on July 30th. The Federal Highway Administration granted the designation after determining the corridor meets all federal standards for interstate design, safety, and performance. The section of Route 15 north of the state line was converted to an interstate in 2014. This designation from US 15 to I-99 reflects decades of planning and hard work to make a significant investment in our future, Penn DOT Secretary Mike Carroll said in a news release. I-99 strengthens the region's transportation network by enhancing long-term safety, mobility, and economic opportunity throughout the region. Since 1984, Penn DOT has been modernizing US 15 into a continuous limited-access highway, the agency said. The improvements were delivered through 34 projects, representing a $480 million investment, including new alignments, upgrades to shoulders, pavement access points, and roadway geometry. Updated signage is currently being installed along the 62-mile corridor and will remain covered until July 30th. The I-99 designation also improves regional connectivity by linking key routes, including I-80 and I-86, making travel more efficient for residents, visitors, and commercial carriers. In the long term, the upgraded corridor is expected to bolster local economies by attracting business investment and improving clarity for road users. The new designation will also mean some rule changes, including weight limits for the hauling industry. Gillibrand visits city to discuss rising food prices. There's a picture of Senator Kirsten Gillibrand shopping at Ars Market with State Senator Jeremy Cooney and store owner Carrie Coca, after addressing how the rising cost of groceries is impacting working families. The picture includes the three shopping at Ars Market and the produce section and the frozen food section. U.S. Senator Kirsten Gillibrand visited Ars Market in Rochester on Monday to highlight the rising cost of groceries as part of a statewide tour focused on inflation and consumer confidence. Gillibrand, Democrat, New York, said increasing prices continue to strain family budgets across New York and called for greater accountability over the rising cost of everyday essentials. Gillibrand's visit comes as the latest Bureau of Labor Statistics Consumer Price Index showed headline inflation rose 4.2% over the past 12 months, the sharpest annual increase since April 2023. She said many working families continue to struggle as wage growth has failed to keep pace with the rising cost of groceries and other household necessities. According to the latest inflation data, prices for fruits and vegetables have increased 6.1%, while non-alcoholic beverages are up 5.8%. She blamed President Donald Trump's policies, including U.S. involvement in the ongoing war in Iran, for driving up costs. Trump's policies, including U.S., are making basic necessities unaffordable for hardworking New Yorkers. He promised to tackle rising costs, but instead he's made everything worse. Prices on groceries, gas, and essentials have skyrocketed here at home as he pours taxpayer dollars into a forever war abroad. I will continue to demand accountability and fight for all Americans being crushed by these unsustainable costs. Gillibrand was joined by State Senator Jeremy Cooney and Ars Market owner Carrie Coca. Coca said independent grocery stores face increasing pressure as they try to support local vendors while keeping everyday staples affordable for customers. She said prices at Ars Market have increased about 30% over the past year. We strive to offer the best selections, but the cost to do so can sometimes seem crippling, Coca said. Rochester is one of several stops on Gillibrand's statewide tour highlighting the impact of rising grocery prices and declining consumer confidence. She has also held events in Utica, Poughkeepsie, Latham, and Riverhead. Rochester General hit with second $100,000 nurse staffing penalty. By Carrie Weaver, Rochester Democrat Chronicle. For the second time in a year, Rochester General Hospital faces a $100,000 penalty for low nurse staffing. An independent arbitrator ruled RGAs has to pay a $100,000 penalty to registered nurses represented by the Rochester Union of Nurses and Allied Professionals under a staffing provision of their contract. The understanding came in Q2 2025. Previously, for Q1 2025, in 2025, RGH agreed before arbitration to pay $100,000 for understaffing registered nurses under the RUNAP union contract. According to an analysis by RUNAP, R-U-N-A-P, the hospital had fewer registered nurses than the minimum required on over 90% of 12-hour shifts from April to June 2025. Nurses don't want this money, said RUNAP Vice President Jillian Kingsley in a statement. We just want our hospital to be safe. That's what our patients deserve. In women's care, we deal with laboring mothers sick babies in the NICU, and other sensitive patients. They deserve better. As RunUp plans to continue monitoring staffing levels and enforcing their contract, they are also asking patients, families, and community members to share their experiences with hospital staffing. Rochester Regional Health provided the following statement: patient safety and nurse workload are our highest priorities. Rochester General Hospital continues to hire and retain highly qualified, compassionate, and talented nurses, hiring 266 in 2025 alone, at a time when healthcare systems across the country are facing significant staffing and recruiting challenges. Our continued commitment to supporting our nurses helps ensure that they can continue to deliver the care our patients deserve. In addition, RGH has taken great strides to remain adaptable to meet changes in patient volume and acuity. Importantly, the parties recognized during negotiations for the current collective bargaining agreement with the RGH nurses that unavoidable staffing shortages can occur in the healthcare environment, and specifically contemplated the use of additional pay as one of the tools available to address those challenges under certain circumstances. Our focus is, and will remain, on ensuring that our team members are supported in delivering the highest level of patient care while maintaining the flexibility necessary to respond to evolving patient care needs. An article from page 4 of the Rochester Democrat Chronicle of July 22nd, Community Rallies to Help Lux Lounge After Fire, by Marcia Greenwood. In the aftermath of a June 29th fire that devastated South Wedge Institution Lux Lounge, 666 South Avenue, owner Carrie Lawton has learned an important lesson. It pays to be nice, she said. In 2002, when she opened Lux, my goal was to build a communal space for people to connect and make friends and share ideas, she said. I don't run a cutthroat business. I've always given back to the neighborhood. Now the neighborhood and larger community are giving back to her. Small businesses and individual people have stopped up to support Lawton in her hour of need. And I appreciate it so much, she said. Among the establishments that either have hosted fundraisers for Lux or are hosting Lux Nights to provide Lawton's staff with temporary work are Martine, Boulder Coffee, Ziggy's, Jack's Extra Fancy, and Bar Bad Ending. A GoFundMe campaign started by Lux patron Bianco Ramos has raised nearly $25,000. And Tiny Fish Printing, 258 Hayward Avenue, is selling custom Lux t-shirts for $10 and donating 100% of the proceeds to the bar. I am beyond grateful, said Lawton, whose establishment employs 35 people. And you people loved us, but wow, they are really coming out of the woodwork. She said she hasn't taken any of the donations yet. I'm working that out. I'm working with my accountant on the best way to deal with that. I want to do this right. At the time of her interview with the Democrat Chronicle, Lawton didn't know what insurance would cover. As of July 20th, the fire's cause had not been determined, and the Rochester Fire Department's investigation was continuing. The blaze, captured on surveillance video shared to YouTube, started in Lux's second-floor business office. Everything in it was lost. All of Lawton's photos and personal journals, filled with bar remembrances, are gone, and her CD collection was reduced to a pile of melted plastic. Also destroyed DJ equipment, tools, records, and a John Waters autographed picture Lawton got when the avant-garde filmmaker visited Rochester years ago. Sadly, the remains of two departed cats, Trigger and Mr. Mustachio, are missing too. That was the punch to the gut, she said. Miraculously, her living office cat Woody was saved by firefighters. When they walked out with her, oh my gosh, it was a beautiful moment and one of my worst moments, she said. Taken in as a stray, Woody used to hang out Lux's backyard woodpile. She is being treated for extensive burns to her belly, but she's a trooper and finally eating and purring. Fire didn't reach Lux's maximalist first floor bar space, but it sustained significant smoke and water damage. Luckily, we were able to save a lot of the artwork, Lawton said. The fire department was amazing. They literally came in and put plastic over a lot of stuff to save it from water damage. They worked so fast. Her goal is for the bar to be restored to the way it looked before. So when you walk, you'll be like, we're back home. It's not going to be too polished. It's still going to be Lux. Lawton doesn't have a firm timeline for reopening. Reconstruction won't be able to start until the fire investigation is completed. Optimally, Lux will be back by September 26th, the bar's 24th anniversary. Once we get a green light, I'm going to be like a bulldog getting this up and running as soon as possible. You're listening to a reading of articles and features from the Democrat and Chronicle on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. County legislator announces Rochester City Council bid. Kira Weaver. Monroe County legislator Rachel Barnhart announced on July 20th her plans to run for the East District on Rochester City Council. In a social media post, Barnhart said Council member Mary Lupian has decided not to seek re-election and is grateful that she is trusting her to carry the work forward. Lupian confirmed in a press release on Monday that after 2 terms on Rochester City Council, she will not be seeking re-election. She also announced her endorsement of Barnhart to succeed her. It has been the honor of my life to serve the people of the East District. Together we've shown that when we invest in people, we build a safer, healthier, and more compassionate city. I'm proud of what we've accomplished, and I'm confident Rachel Barnhart will continue that work. Barnhart has served on the Monroe County Legislature since 2019. In her 3rd term, Barnhart noted how she's been on the front lines of protecting immigrants from President Donald Trump's United States Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, addressing affordable housing and homelessness, and working for transparent and ethical government. She now plans to bring her government and community experience to Rochester City Hall. I'll work every day to make sure Rochester has affordable housing, clean air, transportation, and economic opportunities. I believe City Hall works best when leaders are willing to ask tough questions, listen to residents, and focus on solving problems. The Democratic primary election is taking place in June 2027. 5 of the Democrat and Mike Murphy wrote this article. The search is on. Krista Gleason, who serves as board chair of the Ontario County Chamber of Commerce, was appointed interim president of the Canandaigua-based business organization effective August 1st. That's when Tracy Dello Stritto, who has led the chamber since 2023, leaves the organization to head up the Finger Lakes Visitors Connection, the tourism agency of Ontario County. Dello Stritto succeeds Alicia M. Ritchie, who is leaving to be the next executive director of the Brandywine Valley in Chester County, Pennsylvania. Gleason, who is senior advisor at her Gleason Strategies organizational strategy and communications company, will serve in the interim role until a new president and chief executive officer is selected. As board chair for the past 2 years and as a business owner and longtime chamber member, I look forward to this opportunity to contribute in a new way to our chamber's success. Nicole Mahoney, who is vice chair of the chamber board, will serve as acting chair of the board of directors. Mahoney will also head the search committee for the next chamber leader. Who will be next chamber president, CEO? A search team will look at candidates in and out of the organization. The next leader will help build on the Chamber's community impact and help shape the organization's strategic plan, bring added value to the membership, and expand collaboration with community partners across the county. Interested in serving? Applications are due by August 6th. Page 5 of the Democrat Chronicle, another article, which is by Joey Garrison. President Donald Trump took executive action on July 20th to impose a new 50% tariff on a wide range of imports from Canada in retaliation for what his administration called discriminatory Canadian trade practices in certain industries against the United States, according to administration officials. The move, which risks reigniting a trade war between Canada and the United States, comes after Trump threatened tariffs against the country in response to smoke that entered the United States from wildfires in Canada. An administration official said Trump is exploring unspecified tariff options for the wildfire response, however. The sweeping tariffs, which go into effect August 19th, apply to a range of Canadian imports, from wine and dairy to hockey sticks to cement, an official said, but do not extend to energy, potash, fish, and critical minerals, among other exemptions. All other Canadian exports, including those singled out as tariff-free in the United States-Canada-Mexico Agreement signed in 2019, are subject to the tariff. Trump administration officials who discussed the move with reporters on the condition of anonymity cited Canadian trade practices on alcoholic beverages, automobiles, and dairy products exported from the United States for prompting the action, which the officials characterized as defensive measures. In the past year, all but 2 Canadian provinces have halted the purchase of alcohol from the United States, but not from other countries. Canada has imposed tariffs on automobiles from the United States, but not other countries. And Canada has established tariff rate quotas on cheese from the United States that are more restrictive than the Canadian policy with the European Union. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney defended his country's trade actions in a statement on Trump's latest tariffs, arguing that Canada has merely matched the tariffs and trade policies imposed by the United States. Canada believes in the benefits of free and fair trade, Carney said, pointing to trade agreements Canada has reached with other nations besides the United States. This trade dispute has raised costs for families, particularly in the U.S. Canada stands ready to engage intensively to address outstanding issues with the U.S. to the mutual benefit of our citizens. Trump signed 3 proclamations formalizing the tariffs, which were made by invoking Section 338 of the Tariff Act of 1930, often referred to as the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act. The century-old law is a different statute than the law Trump previously cited, the International Emergency Economic Powers Act of 1977, and is pushed to use presidential emergency powers to impose reciprocal tariffs on countries. The Supreme Court in February blocked Trump's use of emergency powers to impose tariffs under the 1977 law, forcing the White House to pursue other legal avenues to unilaterally levy fees on imports. For more than a year, the United States and Canada have targeted exports from each other in a deepening trade war. Trump imposed 25% tariffs on imported automobiles from Canada, prompting Canada to hit the United States with auto tariffs of the same amount. Trump also imposed 50% tariffs on all steel and aluminum imports and 10% tariffs on all lumber imports, both of which affect goods from Canada. 8 of the Rochester Democrat Chronicle. Taylor Farms' reach spans U.S. brands. Company issued lettuce recall amid outbreak. Taylor Farms produces much of the lettuce sold in America's supermarkets and fast food restaurants. Right now, many consumers would like to know which ones. The company is in the news because of a historic outbreak of cyclosporiasis, the explosive diarrhea disease, with cases surging across more than 30 states in recent weeks. Taylor Farms on July 17th issued a voluntary recall of iceberg lettuce products as a result of the outbreak and investigation, which initially connected the illnesses to lettuce from Taylor's farm that Mexico sold in part through Taco Bell locations in 5 states. The following day, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration said a lettuce sample from Taylor Farms tested positive for cyclospora. However, the agency later said that the test was a false positive. The FDA said that as of July 19th, there were no confirmed positive results for samples of Taylor Farms lettuce tested for cyclospora. The agency said it's still working with Taylor Farms as it continues to trace the source of the outbreak. The agency has instructed Americans not to eat some of the iceberg lettuce produced by Taylor Farms. Consumers might have a difficult time following that directive. It's hard to know the provenance of the lettuce in a restaurant, taco, burger, or sub. However, it's clear that Taylor Farms lettuce is in a lot of places. The company is the leading global producer of salads and healthy fresh foods per its website, with facilities in the United States, Mexico, Canada, and Europe. It has a $37 billion in revenue and more than 25,000 employees and 30 processing facilities, according to a profile in the University of California, Berkeley's Haas magazine. Operating across retail, food service, and prepared food, Taylor Farms partners with every major retail group, club store, and quick service restaurant chain in the country. Many supermarket chains sell Taylor Farms lettuce. Visit the company's Find a Product webpage and type in your location, and you'll see a who's who of American supermarkets and big box retailers that carry Taylor Farms salad kits and other products. The list includes Walmart, Target, Safeway, Whole Foods, Major, Vons, Food for Less, H-E-B, Sprouts, Fry's, Albertsons, and Kroger. The potentially contaminated produce includes some bagged lettuce products sold at Walmart under the Market Side brand. The Walmart items are the only affected products that have been sold in retail, USA Today previously reported. The potentially contaminated produce includes some bagged lettuce products sold at Walmart under the Market Side brand. Looking at distributors, U.S. Foods confirmed to USA Today that its Cross Valley Farms brand is part of the recall. Cisco said it was among the affected distributors. The question of which restaurant chains serve Taylor Farms is trickier to answer. We know that Taco Bell does because of the much-discussed recall. Chipotle also serves Taylor Farms produce, a company official confirmed July 20th. We are continuing to follow the cyclospora investigation very closely, and at this time we don't believe the ingredients we source are associated, said Lori Scallo, Chief Corporate Affairs and Food Safety Officer at Chipotle. The Taylor Farms website doesn't offer a full list of the big-name chain restaurants that serve its lettuce. That makes it hard for consumers to guess which brands they might want to avoid. We do know which chains have served Taylor Farms lettuce and other produce in the past, thanks to a 2014 report from Capital and Maine and the Huffington Post. That list includes McDonald's, Subway, KFC, Long John Silver's, and Pizza Hut, as well as Darden restaurants whose brands include Olive Garden. Taylor Farms has had previous recalls, although some have involved mislabeled products rather than potential pathogens. A few examples. In 2025, Taylor Farms voluntarily recalled salad kits sold in 25 states over the presence of undeclared ingredients. In 2024, the company was involved in the removal of quarter pounders from McDonald's menus in many restaurants over potential E. coli contamination in raw onions. In 2019, the company recalled roughly 2,100 pounds of mislabeled products that contained a known allergen. In 2017, Taylor Farms recalled about 6,630 pounds of chicken and pork salad products possibly tainted with Listeria monocytogenes. In 2013, the New York Times reported that Taylor Farms had an unusual number of voluntary recalls involving potentially tainted products. Company officials ascribed the volume of recalls to the company's scale. Just if you do the sheer math, our recalls relative to our size are fewer than anybody else, said Bruce Taylor, chief executive of Taylor Farms. Taylor, a third-generation lettuce grower in California's Salinas Valley, founded the company in 1995 and some partners. The goal was to be North America's favorite producer of salads and healthy fresh foods, according to its website. Taylor Farms has indeed grown into the leading producer of salads and other healthy fare, according to the Berkeley Business School profile. In 2012, the company entered the supermarket industry with the first ever branded prepackaged chopped salads with dressings and condiments, according to the profile. The company has also taken a prominent role in promoting food safety. Around 2007, Taylor partnered with the Produce Marketing Association to create a Center for Produce Safety, working with other growers to standardize practices. In 2009, Taylor Farms introduced smartwash solutions, which the Berkeley profile termed a revolutionary wash water monitoring system to sanitize and prevent microbial cross-contamination. According to a 2026 report in the trade publication Western Farm Press, Taylor Farms revolutionized its industry by turning it into a fixed-price business that offered growers a guaranteed profit while providing customers a consistent supply. Just your forecast for today, Wednesday, July 22nd. Breezy, a little rain in the morning, 71 high, 55 low. Thursday, partly sunny and comfortable, 76 high, 55 low. Friday is mostly sunny, with the temperatures high of 82 and the low of 59. Saturday, a thunderstorm in spots in the afternoon, high of 82, low of 62. Sunday, mostly sunny, 85 high, the low will be 65. Nation and World Extra. Southeast Asian ministers urge restraint in Middle East conflict. Diplomats voice serious concern over hostilities. The Middle East crisis overshadowed a diplomatic gathering in Southeast Asia on July 21st, where foreign ministers voiced concerns over renewed hostilities that add to uncertainty in a region grappling to manage tensions and conflicts of its own. Foreign ministers from the 11-member Association of Southeast Asian Nations and major partners have meetings in Manila this week against a backdrop of instability since the United States and Iran resumed open conflict, raising fears about energy supplies through the Strait of Hormuz, as well as inflation and global growth. Risks have increased in recent days, with Yemen's Iran-aligned Houthis announcing a naval blockade on Saudi Arabia, opening a potential new front in the conflict and raising the threat to global energy supplies and trade beyond the Gulf. We are deeply concerned that these developments severely undermine the ongoing efforts of key mediators and diminish the prospects for a peaceful resolution through dialogue and diplomacy, the minister said in a statement after a closed-door meeting. Southeast Asia, a major oil importer with a combined gross domestic product of $3.8 trillion, is highly exposed to the supply crunch and has sought to fast-track an ASEAN oil sharing mechanism to mitigate the impact. I'll pronounce it ASEAN. Was set to hold a consultation on the conflict in Myanmar as the bloc's peace initiative falters 5 years after a military coup that plunged the country into a civil war that has killed an estimated 100,000 people. Officials are also likely to discuss tensions in the South China Sea, with Asia and China still trying to conclude a code of conduct to prevent disputes from escalating after nearly 10 years. Tensions between Manila and Beijing have intensified ahead of an expected meeting between Philippine Foreign Affairs Secretary Maria Teresa Lazaro and Chinese Foreign Ministry Wang Yi on the sidelines of meetings. A fresh dispute erupted after the Philippine military accused China's Coast Guard personnel of aggressively striking one of its Navy personnel on the head with a baton near the disputed Second Thomas Shoal in the South China Sea on July 20th, prompting accusations of provocation and dangerous moves from both governments. Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. summoned China's ambassador in Manila on July 21st hours after Manila's envoy in Beijing was similarly summoned. In talk with ASEAN's Secretary General Kao Kim Horn, Wang said certain forces within the Philippine military and police deliberately engaged in provocations and created maritime incidents. He said these served the interest of external forces and undermined China-Philippines relations. Wang said the South China Sea issue should not be an obstacle in China-ASEAN relations and that Beijing was willing to work with the bloc to eliminate interfering factors, according to an official readout of the meeting. Earlier that day, the Chinese Foreign Ministry told a media briefing that was not a forum for discussing bilateral maritime disputes. The Philippines should earnestly fulfill its duties as ASEAN's rotating chair, promote dialogue and cooperation, rather than placing its own political interests above regional peace and stability. The U.S. State Department condemned what it described as China's dangerous and aggressive actions in what it called China's troubling pattern of provocation against lawful Philippine maritime operations. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Wang will join the ASEAN-led meeting in the coming days and could meet on the sidelines. Also attending will be India, Japan, Australia, South Korea, Russia, Britain, and the European Union, among others. Without naming China, Rubio took a swipe at Beijing in an opinion piece published in Manila on July 21st, reaffirming U.S. commitment to freedom of navigation, but saying such freedom was by no means guaranteed. If those waters fall under the control of a power willing to use commerce as a geopolitical weapon, both the United States and the ASEAN states would face dire new threats to their sovereignty, security, and economic futures, Rubio wrote. Rubio reiterated that a 2016 arbitral ruling which invalidated China's sweeping sovereignty claims in the South China Sea was final and binding, and said the United States would honor its obligations to the Philippines and other allies as they confront new and coercive threats to our shared interest. China does not recognize the arbitration ruling, which went in favor of the Philippines. Buffalo man killed in New York thruway crash in Erie County. A Buffalo man was killed early Sunday in a crash involving a tractor trailer on the New York State Thruway in Erie County. The collision occurred around 4:33 a.m. on the eastbound lanes of Interstate 90 in the state of Evans. State police said Andre Aiken, 33, of Buffalo, was driving a 2023 Kia sedan in the passing lane when the vehicle drifted into the driving lane and collided with a 2025 Freightliner tractor trailer. Investigators said both vehicles traveled onto the south shoulder and struck a guardrail. Aiken was pronounced dead at the scene. The tractor trailer driver, Drew Monta Kism, 28, of Bellevue, Illinois, was transported to Erie County Medical Center with minor injuries. The crash closed all eastbound lanes of the thruway for several hours while investigators conducted a collision reconstruction. State police were assisted by the Troop T Commercial Vehicle Enforcement Unit, Troop A Bureau of Criminal Investigation, Troop A Collision Reconstruction Unit, the Erie County Medical Examiner's Officer, the Evans Police Department, and Evans Center Ambulance. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the July 22nd issue of the Democrat and Chronicle. Your reader has been Elizabeth Ortel. Thank you for listening.